Breath is having a moment in yoga studios, coaching sessions, on the shelves of every bookshop. Breathwork is being sold as the key to health, calm and longevity. James Nestor's book, Breath, became a bestseller. I read it and I found it fascinating. It puts forward the idea that how we breathe can change our lives. Athletes are retraining their lungs. Therapists are teaching clients to manage trauma through exhalation. There's courses, apps, influencers and retreats. Millions of people are rediscovering what ancient traditions never forgot, that breath is sacred. But while we're learning how to breathe, we're still ignoring a more urgent question. What exactly are we breathing in? According to a recent report from the Royal College of Physicians, the answer is that the air we're breathing in the UK is toxic. The latest official UK government estimates are that around 29,000 to 43,000 deaths a year are attributable to air pollution. These figures are for the year 2019. The RCP finds that the figures are now lower due to reductions in pollutant levels. However, it still estimates that air pollution is responsible for around 30,000 early deaths a year in the UK. A staggering figure that's quietly accepted, even excused, as the price of everyday habits. People continue to assert their entitlement to drive wherever and whenever they like. Industry clings to fossil fuels. Politicians weigh lives against electoral risk. And so the dying continues. Not through ignorance, but through deliberate inaction masked as pragmatism. The RCP also reports that 3,010 new cases of lung cancer were due to air pollution in 2019, that there were 9,750 new cases of asthma in children, and that 315,000 days of school absence were attributed to illness from just one of the pollutants, PM2.5. These are not abstract statistics. They're stolen childhoods, missed educations, lives cut short, families dragged into cycles of illness, anxiety and loss. This is the human cost of dirty air. Tiny particles, PM2.5, nitrogen oxides, volatile compounds, enter our lungs, pass into our bloodstream and reach every organ of the body, including the brain. They're not linked just to asthma and lung disease, but to stroke, dementia, cancer, low birth weight and cognitive decline. 1 in 19 deaths in major UK cities is now linked to air pollution. The data is overwhelming. Breath is sacred, yet we're allowing it to be poisoned. What makes this even more disturbing is that the damage isn't evenly shared. Air pollution hits the poorest hardest. Those with the fewest choices and the least protection bear the greatest burden. The RCP report found that children in deprived areas are 4 times more likely to have reduced lung function in adulthood than those in affluent districts. The report also found that people in the 20% most deprived areas of England experienced 8% higher concentrations of fine particulate matter than those in the wealthiest. Minoritized ethnic groups suffer disproportionately regardless of income. In cities, those who can afford it buy air purifiers, move away from traffic corridors, or work from well-ventilated offices. The rest inhale what's left. We don't yet charge people to breathe, but we've come close to monetizing fresh air, and those who can't afford the price pay with their health. What's extraordinary is that this is still framed as a trade-off, a necessary consequence of productivity, a regrettable but unavoidable side of economic growth. But that's not the reality. The health costs of air pollution, including healthcare, social care and lost productivity, has been estimated at £50 billion for 2019 alone. The total health and social care budget for 2024-25 is £190 billion. This means that the health costs of air pollution account for more than a quarter of all health and social care spending. The UK government has recently been proposing to cut personal independence payments, disability benefits. They've been watering down their plans in light of significant opposition, but even their original plan, according to the IFS, would only have saved £5 billion in 2029-30 and presumably each year after that. It's almost unbelievable, the disproportionate focus on PIP benefits when that original plan would only have saved £5 billion a year, while the health costs of air pollution are £50 billion a year. It gets even worse. According to official estimates from the Climate Change Committee, the statutory body established by law to advise the government, the net cost of reaching net zero by 2050 is 0.2% of GDP per year. That's around £5 billion per year. Meanwhile, we're spending 10 times more every year treating the symptoms of pollution than it would cost to address the root causes. This isn't a cost-benefit problem, it's an ethical failure, and it reflects a deep lack of political courage to take the long view. Of course, that £50 billion cost of air pollution in the RCP report is only health costs. These figures do not include the broader environmental costs of air pollution. For example, damage to crops, buildings or ecosystems. It's focused on the human and economic toil of health impacts. If there is no pollution, the saving would be a lot more than £50 billion. And there's more. Net zero isn't just a cost, it's an investment that can act as a Keynesian-style stimulus, especially over the long term. The Climate Change Committee previously estimated that by 2035, the economy could be around 2% larger due to the net zero transition, roughly £50 billion a year in added output. That's a structural uplift that keeps paying back year after year. To be fair, those forecasts are speculative. The latest report from the Climate Change Committee is more cautious, suggesting that while long-term GDP impacts are uncertain, they're at least likely to be broadly neutral. Personally, I believe the transition will expand GDP because it drives investment, innovation and job creation. And this is exactly what the UK economy needs right now, a productive, future-facing stimulus. And that is just the start. Add in lower energy bills, cleaner air, fewer deaths, less illness, and the case becomes clear. Net zero more than pays for itself. This failure is partly technical, partly political, but at its core, it's ethical. It's about humanity. I would argue it's even spiritual. Air has long been treated in economics as an externality, a marginal concern, something unpriced and secondary to the real business of production. But breath is not external, it's internal, continuous, essential. Every breath we take is a moment of intimacy with the world, and every molecule we inhale carries the trace of political decisions, regulatory failures and economic priorities. What was once freely given is now laced with harm. The language of the RCP report is scientific and sober. It avoids emotional, humanistic or spiritual terms, but what it describes is ultimately desecration. Breath is life. In ancient traditions, we have these beautiful poetic words to describe it. In Hebrew, the word ruach means both breath and spirit. In Sanskrit, prana is the life force. In Latin, spiritus is both respiration and soul. When we poison the air, we violate something far deeper than public health, something that our ancient ancestors understood. We sever the unseen thread that binds body, earth and being. There are answers, and they're hardly radical. Compact cities, active travel, walking, cycling, decent ventilation, cleaner heating, green space. This would slash inequality and deliver massive savings, but the sticking point is political short-sightedness. Net zero investment is front-loaded, peaking at around £46 billion a year in the late 2020s as we build the infrastructure we need. But that figure falls over time. The Climate Change Committee puts the average annual investment required across the whole transition to 2050 at just £26 billion a year, around 1% of GDP. And once you factor in the savings from cleaner technologies and reduced fuel use, the net cost falls to just 0.2% of GDP, a fraction of the gross figure, averaging only £5 billion a year. Yes, it's true that it's expensive up front. That's the nature of serious investment. The costs come first, the benefits come later. That's not a flaw, it's the basic structure of economic development. But when economists present the long-term average, opportunistic voices cherry-pick the short-term peaks. They treat investment costs as if they're pure losses, ignoring what comes next. They claim net zero is unaffordable, feeding the public a dangerous fiction that inaction will save money. It won't. It will only defer the reckoning, postponing the bill and compounding the interest in the form of worsening health, rising care costs, lost productivity and mounting climate damage. Some politicians go further, asserting against every reputable analysis that net zero will shrink the economy. But the Climate Change Committee's own modelling shows the opposite. The transition could increase UK GDP by around 2% as early as 2035, with gains continuing thereafter. Ignoring that evidence isn't prudent scepticism, it's malpractice. It's sticking our heads in the sand for the sake of the next news cycle, dumping crippling consequences on our children while we just walk away. This is not just an environmental crisis, it's a spiritual and economic one. It tells us something devastating about our civilization, that we can turn even the most elemental of gifts into an instrument of harm, that we can let breath, the most fundamental act of life, become dangerous. We know what causes polluted air. We know who suffers. We know what to do. The science is in, the economics are in. The only thing missing is the courage to act and the vision to understand that clean air is not a luxury, not a lifestyle add-on, not an app. It's the basis of life, and it should not be priced, stratified or ignored. It should be protected, because to breathe cleanly is not just a right, it's a gift. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I'd really appreciate that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.